2:17 a.m., the kill chain starts on a frozen highway south of Saratov. A transport convoy is moving the Tu-160M, the newest, deadliest iteration of the Soviet bomber fleet. It is being ferried on a specialized heavy loader truck because its avionics package isn't fully calibrated. Ukrainian intelligence is watching. They don't strike to destroy, they strike to disrupt. A single loitering munition slams into the lead escort vehicle. The convoy halts. The damage to the bomber is superficial. A clipped wingtip, a sensor array jarred loose. But the logistical consequence is fatal. The Russian commanders panic. They cannot get the massive airframe into the specialized climate-controlled maintenance hangars because the doors are jammed by the convoy wreckage. They make the only choice they have. They tow the 20-ton nuclear bomber to the North Hardstand. They park it outside under the open sky exposed to the biting Russian winter. They believe they are safe. They believe the S-400 batteries ringing the base form an impenetrable dome of steel. They are wrong. They have just placed the king on a chessboard that Ukraine has already rigged. 200 a.m., 600 miles from the Ukrainian border, the night is silent, but 6 feet above the water, the air is vibrating. 50 Beaver long-range drones are cutting through the fog. These are not military-grade predators. They are slow, loud, and ugly, but they have one advantage that the Russian generals ignored. They fly low, terrifyingly low. The altimeters on the lead drones read 260 feet. They are practicing nap-of-the-earth flight, hiding in the radar shadow of the riverbanks.
The guys.
To the massive search radars sweeping the horizon from the airbase, these drones don't exist. They are ground clutter. They are trucks on a highway. They are ghosts. The swarm is autonomous. There is no pilot back in Kiev holding a joystick. The mission parameters were burned into the logic boards 3 hours ago. They know the terrain, they know the wind, and they know the target. 2:10 a.m. The radar operators inside the S-400 Triumph command vehicle are bored. The Big Bird acquisition radar is punching massive amounts of electromagnetic energy into the upper atmosphere looking for high-altitude NATO fighters or ballistic missiles. They are looking up. The threat is crawling in the grass. Suddenly, the Ukrainian strategy shifts. The swarm splits. 10 drones break away from the river pack. They throttle up. They pull their noses vertical. Within seconds, they pop up over the radar horizon. They don't try to hide. They broadcast their position. They scream electronically, mimicking the radar cross-section of a Storm Shadow cruise missile. Inside the S-400 command vehicle, the boredom vanishes. The screens light up red. The computer screams a launch warning. The Russian commander has 3 seconds to decide. He sees 10 high-speed contacts inbound. He panics. The order is given. Outside, on the perimeter, the massive launch tubes of the S-400 battery blow open. Cold gas ejects 4 48N6E interceptors. The rocket motors ignite, turning the night sky into noon. The physics of the exchange are financially obscene. Russia just fired $8 million of hypersonic death to kill $50,000 of plastic decoys. 5 miles up, the interceptors find their targets. Fireballs bloom in the clouds. The Russian operators cheer. They think they have just stopped a NATO decapitation strike. They are high-fiving in the command truck. 2:14 a.m. While the sky is burning, the ground is moving. 400 yards from the parked Tu-160M, the tall grass ripples. This isn't the wind. 4 men in white winter camouflage are prone in the dirt. This is an elite sabotage unit from the GUR, Ukraine's military intelligence service. They have been lying in the freezing mud for 6 hours waiting for the S-400s to fire. The noise of the missile launch was their cover. The why move now? This was supposed to be a heist. The plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal. They carry a heavy, ruggedized case containing a portable ground power starter and a hacked avionics bypass module. The objective was to sprint to the bomber, jack into the external ports, fire the engines, and taxi the aircraft into the drainage ditch, breaking its back. Suddenly, the air changes. A high-pitched warble cuts through the night. It's not an air raid siren, it's the perimeter ground sensor alarm. A fox triggered a tripwire? A glitch? It doesn't matter. The base is waking up. Headlights sweep across the tarmac. 3 Tiger armored vehicles are roaring out of the garage complex, their machine guns swiveling toward the hardstand. A quick reaction force. The GUR team leader freezes. He checks his watch. He looks at the approaching headlights. He looks at the bomber. The window for the physical sabotage is gone. If they move now, they die, and the mission fails. He taps his headset. Abort Plan A, execute Plan B. The team melts back into the darkness, retreating toward the river. The operative pulls a tablet from his vest. He swipes a confirmation code. He isn't calling for extraction, he is unlocking the kill switch on the remaining 40 drones hovering in the river fog. The drone swarm receives the command. The loiter mode disengages. The attack logic takes over. 40 engines throttled to maximum. The swarm surges up from the riverbank like a cloud of angry hornets. They are less than 60 seconds from impact. On the ground, chaos reigns. The Panzer S-1 systems, the short-range air defense meant to protect the base from exactly this kind of attack, are confused. Their radars are still processing the falling debris from the high-altitude decoys. The sky is full of false echoes. The Panzer creates a track file for every object it sees. Right now it sees hundreds of falling metal fragments. Its fire control computer is overwhelmed. It is trying to shoot down gravity. The Russian gunners are manually slewing their turrets, looking for the threat, but they are looking at the sky, where the S-400s just scored a hit. The drones come in at treetop level. 2:16 a.m. The first visual contact happens. A Russian sentry on the perimeter fence hears the lawnmower buzz. He raises his rifle. He sees the dark shape hurtling toward him at 80 miles an hour. He fires a burst. Tracers zip harmlessly into the night. The lead drone ignores him. It has a visual lock on the target. The AI on board is comparing the camera feed to a 3D model stored in its memory. It is looking for the specific geometry of the Tu-160's wing route. It finds it. But then, the swarm logic updates. The drone's camera spots something else. 1,300 feet to the east of the bomber, there is a row of reinforced bunkers. The heavy blast doors are open. Maintenance crews are moving carts loaded with long cylindrical shapes. KH-101 cruise missiles. The Russian ground crews were in the middle of a loading operation. They are caught in the open with 60 of the deadliest missiles in the Russian inventory. The swarm divides. It is a decision made in milliseconds by the collective AI. 20 drones bank hard to the right. They abandon the bomber. They dive for the open bunkers. Impact. The first drone slams into the lead missile cart. The warhead detonates. A KH-101 missile is essentially a flying fuel tank wrapped in explosives. When the drone hits it, the result is not an explosion. It is an erasure. The fuel ignites. A white-hot sphere of fire expands instantly, engulfing the loading crew and the bunker entrance. The heat is so intense it vaporizes the asphalt. Then, the sympathy detonations begin. One missile cooks off, then the next, then the stockpile inside the bunker. The chain reaction is apocalyptic. The shockwave ripples across the tarmac, shattering the windows of the control tower a mile away. A mushroom cloud of burning rocket fuel rises into the night. The Russian defense grid collapses. The Panzer crews are blinded by the thermal flare. Their infrared sensors are washed out. They are firing blindly into the smoke. Tracers arc across the runway, green streams of light cutting through the black smoke. A few drones are hit. They tumble out of the air, burning wrecks skidding across the concrete, but there are too many of them. 2:18 a.m. 10 drones are left. They have ignored the missiles. They have ignored the chaos. They have one job. The Tu-160M White Swan sits alone on the hard stand. The shockwave from the missile explosion has rocked it on its landing gear, but it is intact. The Russian Quick Reaction Force has reached the plane. The Tiger vehicles are forming a defensive ring. Soldiers are spilling out, firing their AK-74s into the dark air. They are trying to build a wall of lead. But it's futile. The remaining drones execute a synchronized pincer movement. 5 come from the north, 5 come from the south. The lead drone on this north vector takes a hit. It explodes mid-air, showering the tarmac with debris. The second drone corrects its course. It dives. It isn't aiming for the cockpit. It isn't aiming for the fuselage. It is aiming for the engines. The Tu-160 is powered by 4 NK-32 turbofans, the most powerful combat engines ever built. They are massive, complex, and incredibly fragile. The drone slams directly into the intake of engine number 3. The warhead is a shaped charge. It detonates on contact with the compressor fans. The explosion drives a jet of super plasticized copper through the engine core. The turbine blades, spinning in the wind, shatter. Inside the engine nacelle, a blade-out event occurs. The shrapnel from the destroyed fans acts like a shotgun blast from the inside. It shreds the engine casing, it severs the hydraulic lines, it cuts the fuel feed. The engine doesn't just fail, it disintegrates. Seconds later, the second drone hits engine number 4. The impact breaks the wing spar. The structural integrity of the aircraft fails. The massive right wing, heavy with fuel, sags. The landing gear buckles under the sudden shift in weight. The White Swan drops to its knees. The fuselage groans, a screeching sound of tearing metal that drowns out the gunfire. The aircraft lists heavily to starboard, its spine broken. 2:20 a.m. Silence returns to the hard stand, broken only by the crackle of burning jet fuel and the distant secondary explosions from the missile bunkers. The drones are gone. The attack is over. The Russian soldiers stop firing. They lower their weapons. They turn to look at the pride of their air force. It is a wreck. The most advanced bomber in the Russian arsenal, a machine capable of Mach 2 flight and nuclear delivery, has been gutted by a flying lawnmower. The damage is total. The engines are scrap. The wing root is twisted. The avionics are fried by the heat. Repairing this aircraft is impossible. The factories that built it don't exist anymore. The technicians who knew how to align the spar are dead or retired. In 3 minutes, Ukraine has deleted a $250 million strategic asset. The loss of the Tu-160 is a humiliation, but the destruction of the missile stockpile is a strategic disaster. 60 missiles. That represents 2 months of production. That represents 3 massive waves of strikes against the Ukrainian energy grid that will now never happen. Satellite imagery taken the next morning will show a frantic scramble. The remaining heavy bombers at Engels 2 are being prepped for flight. They are not launching a retaliatory strike. They are running away. Russia orders the fleet to redeploy to Olenia airbase. Olenia is in the Arctic Circle. It is 2,000 miles from the front lines. The logistics of this move are a nightmare. The flight crews will now have to fly 5 hours just to reach their launch points. The airframes will accumulate wear and tear at double the rate. The maintenance cycles will collapse. By forcing the fleet north, Ukraine has effectively cut the Russian sortie rate in half without shooting down another plane. This was the heist of the century. They didn't steal the plane, they stole the capability, they stole the safety, they stole the winter. The raid on Engels 2 wasn't just a drone strike, it was a message written in fire and wreckage. It proved that distance is no longer a defense. It proved that the S-400 is not a shield, it is a sieve. The White Swan was a symbol of Soviet glory. Now it is a scorched carcass sitting in a pool of firefighting foam, a monument to a war that has changed faster than Russia can comprehend. Ukraine just bought the world time, and they did it while the Russian radar operators were busy watching the stars.